Hi everyone, welcome. Today we're checking in on a pair of European nightcrawler worm bins. Nothing too interesting about these systems. Nothing really sets them apart with the exception of a little experiment that's been going on now with these worms. Even before they were moved into these two black tubs, these worms, when they lived in their previous home, were given corn cobs. And that was a little bit over a year ago. Almost a year now. Well, I mean over a year now. Almost a week now since those corn cobs reached 1 year of being in the worm bins. Corn cobs that I have not interfered with the breakdown of. And by interfere, I just mean I'm not helping them along. These pieces of corn cob are so far along that I could easily crush any one of them into minute particles and they'd be gone forever. But the whole idea with that was to not do that, to see how long these little corn cob bits can last. And I mean, yeah, they're so small now, but they're really what used to be the half of a corn cob. So I mean, what would easily fit in the palm of your hand as far as the length of it and the regular diameter of a corn cob. But these things are the size of like my pinky finger anymore. But our rule of thumb has been to continue to include any one of these remaining pieces as still being in the running and intact enough to be considered as an intact piece of corn cob, as long as it held on to its cylindrical shape. As soon as one would break apart and no longer be shaped that way, it would just get crushed up and blended into the system, never to be seen again as a corn cob, and probably lending, a lot of speed to its breakdown process. So I think I've got a little bit of leafy matter left. Probably not enough to be very generous, but we could probably still top these systems off with a little bit more leafy matter. Because this stuff here I think will just blend in, even though the system did sort of seem very damp last time. I believe that on the coffee filter that was over here in bin number 2, we noticed what appeared to be puddles almost, and then we even lifted one of the coffee filters out of the system to take a closer look, since it was just mobbed with springtails. But I would say that the most dense group of springtails I spotted was the ones hanging out on this little patch of coffee on the coffee filter here in bin number 1. So it does seem like putting the plastic covers on the way we did last time, a little bit offset from the edge, allowing for things on the very edge to get a little bit dry, allowed for just a little bit of moisture loss, perhaps just enough to make things seem a little less like they're overly damp. I mean, these systems are heavy. They're quite heavy to lift, so there is enough moisture in here to keep things going. So, like I said, how small this thing is, right? I mean, I'm just trying to, for comparison, compare it to my pinky finger. Perhaps my pinky finger is a little bit large still relative to, yeah, I mean, just look at this thing. And, I thought one of the systems still had 2 corn cobs surviving, and, well, I guess here's the one that, yeah, they're both so tiny. But, like, there's always that one on the corn cob where it sort of tapers off and it becomes the thin end, and then you've got the bulkier end. It almost seems like that's what these are. Like, this one could have even been 2 parts of the same corn cob. Imagine that being what had originally started out to be something easily twice the size. And they're still holding up, you got to admit. Over a year now. Well, let's see if we can carefully excavate bin number 2 to retrieve the corn cob from here, because here we were down to only 1 surviving anymore, and we've been repeatedly putting it back into the systems right in the smack in the middle to try to make it really easy to find next time, so they could be removed and excluded from our rough handling of the check-in. This one's got bits and pieces missing, but on this edge it's still holding together as a circular or, tubular shaped object, but for how much longer I don't know. It feels really it feels kind of loose. So it does seem like the last feeding, whatever it is that they got, is for the most part gone. And I do remember using napkins in here, like full-size napkins laid out, not shredded up or anything, or not torn up or anything, just laying in here, and I see no sign of it, at least here in bin number 2. Let's finish the excavation of the feeding zone in bin number 1 here. I guess I already have a little sneak preview into what happened to the bedding from last time. I don't see any sign of it, really. in here. So we've actually, in our quest to find leftovers from the last feeding, created a couple nice little gullies into which today's feeding can go. So let's see, I'm just a little bit ill prepared. I'm gonna need a second. I gotta go get some of those old I like to use those napkins because I'd like to try to do away with as many as I could, but I just need a moment to go grab them. Be right back. So for the longest time, white napkins were what I was trying to get rid of, but now I'm down to my collection where the orange ones seem to be dominant. So these worms are going to get freaked out thinking they're getting a huge pumpkin treat or something like that with all this orange stuff coming in. Well, it just so happens that what I'm feeding them is, for the most part, orange in color. Check it out. What a coincidence. I got a whole bunch of baby carrots down here, and on the bottom, potato peel, which is actually still kind of frozen together. It looks like the baby corn on top is, for the most part, thawed out and is getting a little bit mushy, although I still see a little iceberg hanging off over here, holding stuff together. And, well, I figured I'd use all the napkins I have here, because I've also got my prepared bedding with which we can top off the feeding. And then we are going to have to check, because I think I have some leaves remaining, but how many I don't know. Probably not a whole lot, probably not enough to be very generous, but perhaps we can still come back in here with a nice topping of leafy matter, because once we're done giving them this delicious treat of potato peels and carrots, we're going to make the next priority a good blending in of all that nice leafy stuff we found in here when we first arrived. And well, guess what? It didn't take long. We've given them their food. We've given them some of their bedding. We'll give them more, but before we do, let me just drop in some grit, and then in can come, well, I'm running a little bit low, but we don't need a whole lot. We were already really generous with those two big luxurious napkins down there. I just figured let's throw a little bit of bedding on top of the meal too. That should definitely make for a nice cozy spot for the wormies. Alright, let's see how things on the outer edges look. This is our chance to blend in all these leaves. Kind of camouflage any worms that we might be bumping into here by putting up a bunch of similarly colored material up alongside them. Yeah, you don't have to go down deep, even though the stuff on the surface was a little bit dry from being left partially uncovered. You dig down ever so little into the material and you're already bumping into stuff that's nice and damp. Yeah, this system, I think I mentioned it earlier, they're both quite heavy, a little bit surprisingly heavy. But I'm okay with systems, especially these young ones, 115 day old system, only getting feeding number 11 here today. I think they benefit a lot from being kept nice and damp. But as you can see, the material is just a big blend of all kinds of bedding type materials. And if it was all castings, keeping things overly damp, I think could lead to somewhat of a messy situation. So usually when I start weaning the systems off new bedding and start to drive towards, a pretty high concentration of mainly castings in my vermicompost, a little bit of organic matter remaining in it, it's not a problem, certainly not a problem at all, but as it gets more and more dense of worm castings, it seems to me like it's best not to let it maintain like really high moisture level, because things can get pretty messy pretty quickly. So if you ask me, those carrots are not going to last. From what I've seen, the wormies love carrots. I give them carrot peel a lot. Every so often they actually get full carrots like this, and even though those look like pretty good sized chunks, even though they're baby corn, from a worm's perspective, you'd be nibbling on that for a while before it were gone. Well, I don't think we're gonna have a problem with it. I got a feeling this stuff's gonna go pretty quick. So, the one thing I spaced out on here was the corn cob. Perhaps now that we've actually made it to a year and it just seems like they're not gonna go a whole lot longer, I wonder if my brain's already kind of preemptively tuning it out. Well, I put it right where it belongs, smack in the middle of the feeding, submerged to be in contact with the yummy carrots right down below. So we're gonna have to do the same here. Drop our 2 little pieces of corn cob down into the feeding zone. And now we've almost done everything we wanted to without forgetting too much. So one chance to see if we've got leaves. Here's my supply box. What do we got? Oh, not a lot, that's for sure. Oh, I'm going to use the leaves as a little bit of a abrasive to try to get some of this stuff off my gloves. At the same time, my clean hand's going to get a little bit soiled in the process. Not that that's a problem, but I don't think if I put any more than that, yeah, we wouldn't have enough to give bin number 2 a comparable coating, because that's pretty much all we've got. But that should be enough just to kind of offset the dark material out here on the surface, give them some dry stuff, perhaps soak in some of the moisture. And you know, I do like the way things looked when we got in here at first, just from having scrunched in the sides of the plastic covers. So I think we're going to stick to doing it that way. Worked well here now for this interval between feedings. I did it similarly in another pair of my bins, just kind of crumpling up the plastic cover, allowing for some space around the outer edges for some ventilation, and it ended up allowing the system to kick off a little bit of its excess moisture content. So, what did I forget? Well, at this point, it's pretty much too late for anything that I forgot. If it had not been for the missed objects being those corn cobs, I might not have excavated down to the feeding zone to get them where they belong. But, well, you know, they're special. They're a year old now. And going. And we'll see how much longer they go. So that's it for the video, everyone. Got a few more things to take care of getting cleaned up and put away, but that's not interesting. Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. If you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye now.